The mistitled Pan's Labyrinth is a dark fable, but not for kids. Layered in symbolism and contrasting motifs of innocence and brutality, feminine and masculine, realism and fantasy, this is a story for the suffering child within each of us. But what does it all mean? Today we are going to dive deep into this monstrous masterpiece, but even that will just be scratching the surface. Hello, I'm Kevin Harris, and I help people understand themselves by helping them understand the stories that resonate with them. The movie starts with the words, "The war is over." Yet we hear and then see a child suffering, bleeding, and even dying. The fact that she is named Ophelia is another omen.
Ophelia? Ophelia?
Tied back to Shakespeare's Hamlet, that our young heroine is destined for death.
Whenever somebody spoke about childhood as that period where you are almost invisible and you can be dented by things that don't see you, like war, poverty, things that are steamrolling the entire society, the kids are the silent victims in a way. And I thought that was very powerful.
But this film offers a unique perspective, one that begins before birth and continues after death, at least in Ophelia's mind. The tragic and brutal, quote, real life, unquote, depicted is just a small part of the vast and beautiful eternal realm where our innocent heroine's real father and mother await her. She whispers to her unborn baby brother that immortality is like a beautiful rose that can be acquired only if we are willing to sacrifice ourselves, passing through the poisonous thorns and briars that don't just hurt you, but kill you in the process. As has been pointed out by others, the faun,
Soy un fauno,
who represents the earth, neither good nor bad, but a messenger or sentinel, has a head in the shape of the female reproductive organs, and similar imagery can be seen throughout the film. Richard Lindsay published a fascinating article linked below, describing how Pan's Labyrinth, including the countdown to the full moon, can be viewed symbolically as the death of childhood through the beginning of menstruation and the birth of adulthood. My main takeaway from the film and this imagery is more on this life being represented as the birthing canal for the next life, the eternal life. This life, as depicted with its clocks and broken timepieces, often seen in conjunction with Captain Vidal, can be too much to handle if not seen as a temporary passageway or portal to the next life once we have passed a few tests.
A esa gente, Dios ya les ha salvado el alma. Lo que al cuerpo le suceda, bien poco le importa.
There are three monsters in this movie that the faun requires Ophelia to face. The first is the giant toad who, much like Ophelia's new father, Captain Vidal, has set up camp in the area and is now sucking the life out of the tree, or trees in Vidal's case.
¿No te da vergüenza estar aquí abajo, comiéndote los bichitos, engordando mientras el árbol se muere?
The name Vidal ironically meaning life in Spanish. After crawling through a long birth canal-like tunnel, the monstrous toad hits her with his tongue, and then Scream belches at her, and then forcefully takes from her 3 stones from her which it can't stomach, and then vomits out its innards, leaving its skin behind. While this is happening, the equally monstrous Captain Vidal is having a large dinner party where he explains that he is restricting everyone else's rations while he is eating a feast.
a partir de hoy, una cantidad de racionamiento por familia.
The next monster, after passing through a long red corridor, appears also to be having a large banquet where no one is allowed to eat except him, and he apparently eats children, but it doesn't look like he has eaten anything for a long time. The pillman's skin hangs off of him as if he had once been large like the toad, but now his gluttonous innards have all been expelled. Much like Captain Barbossa, he is dead to the simple joys of life.
For too long I've been parched of thirst and unable to quench it. Too long I've been starving to death and haven't died.
The pale man chases Ophelia down the long red corridor. The third monster is of course Captain Vidal himself, a narcissist who delights in torturing people and killing for no reason other than his own pride. He eventually gets stabbed and his face cut open and has to stitch his skin to keep it in place. Each of these monsters have issues with their skin and bodies fitting them properly.
You want to know how I got these scars?
He chases Ophelia through the corridors of the labyrinth, where the portal stands like a large headstone.
A labyrinth, it is said, is not a place to be lost, but a place to find yourself. And that is one of the mystical principles of a labyrinth, or one of the ideas is that you can find your path in a labyrinth towards the right place to be, and many labyrinths were created as mosaic work and tile work in old churches, Gothic churches, and walking the labyrinth while meditating and thinking or praying was a form of finding your own truth, your own self.
During the eulogy of Ophelia's mother, whose spirit has left her now empty body behind, the priest, speaking of death, says, "Because when we open our arms, the earth takes in only a hollow and senseless shell. Far away now is the soul in its eternal glory." The monsters seem to be nothing but a shell. They are only concerned with their mortal glory and legacy, such as Vidal holding his pocket watch in hand while he goes to battle so that he can smash the watch the moment he dies, essentially freezing time in his eyes, and leave that as a remembrance of his supposed heroism for his newborn son. On the other hand, Ophelia is willing to sacrifice her life to actually save that same child, whether she is remembered or not.
No es mi padre. El capitán no es mi padre.
Ophelia, or better yet, Princess Moana's real father, is a god, because the paths of the Lord are inscrutable. And the Lord, mentioned in the eulogy, sacrificed his life so that God's other children could be saved. With each required task, she faces death and then emerges alive again with new knowledge and experience, represented by the physical objects she is required to retrieve. Until the final task, which, like Ender's Game, ends up being more than a game and overlaps more fully into the real world. This time, in facing death, she reaches the flower just as the thorns, Vidal, reach her. And this time she is reborn not into this world, but exalted in the next. Another interesting clue is found in the song that is played on the record player. The title is En los Jardines de Granada, which translates to In the Gardens of the Pomegranate. Pomegranates are a common symbol in Christian art and iconography, representing fertility, abundance, and eternal life themes. They also have ties to the Garden of Eden, because the Latin root for the name pomegranate means seeded apple, and is believed by Jewish scholars to be the original forbidden fruit of the Garden of Eden. Having been denied dinner, Ophelia is tempted to eat the forbidden fruit at the pale man's table. Even though there have been warnings of what could occur if she does, she gives in and enjoys the delicious fruit. This causes death to be awakened, much like when Eve ate the forbidden fruit in the garden and became mortal. And now both Eve and Ophelia must immediately leave this space through a different way than they've gone before, a higher way. Later she wants to run away from Vidal, but she knows she can't leave the baby boy, Adam, behind. In the Garden of Pomegranate, near the Darro and Genil rivers, hidden among magnolias, I have a palace for you. Going back to the menstruation idea, the pomegranate can be viewed as the beginning of fruitful seeds, or the ability to have children. Eve chose to disobey and ate the fruit, much like Ophelia chose to disobey the fawn, and not hand over her baby brother to be sacrificed. In both cases, this leads to the continuation of life and future generations. At the beginning of the movie, Ophelia restores the eye of a statue, and out pops an insect that, much like the cricket from Guillermo del Toro's later movie, guides her on her journey. She is given spiritual eyes, because God, in his infinite wisdom, puts the solution in our hands. It is the opposite of the pale man's eyes, which sit in front of him, not being used except to appease his own carnal needs. Captain Vidal is also blind to the world outside of his own selfish motives. It isn't until the very end of his life, when his face is pierced, creating an opening, perhaps allowing him to see beyond himself for the first time, as he dies. Vidal, the toad, and the pale man, with their immature masculine energy, brought death and sucked the life out of everything around them. Ophelia, with her mature, life-giving energy, symbolized by her green clothes, passed through all the portals and passageways, not afraid of death, suffering innocently that others might not suffer, and bringing life everywhere she went. Even as she lay on the altar, trusting, like Isaac of old, that her father, her immortal father, would accept of her sacrifice and bring her home to him. Because only in his physical absence is the place he occupies in our souls reaffirmed. And that is the moral of the story. What does this movie mean to you? Please let me know in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time.